And whether your legs are long or your feet are standing, when we really begin to learn to be in the present moment with ourselves, not to fix, but just to honor something that makes it easier. It makes it better. Well, that's what I'm encouraging you to follow, because that's an internal sensation. Often we can say a voice within. And I think as we mature and get older, we can become a little bit more attuned that that's the voice we need to listen to. And not necessarily what somebody else says we should do or thinks about us, but rather be congruent with yourself. So, in fact, what we're doing is we're noticing, we're observing, and letting those skills awaken, to which they'll create options, versus evaluating, where an evaluation, excuse me, has some judgment to it. And just being able to pause in the present moment so that from there, something awakens, it dawns on us, and we can begin to generate change for us. This is the learning that reinforces making other choices through comparisons. So, very slowly, if your feet are already standing, they're standing, but you can reevaluate, where did I stand them? And if they're long, go through your process, listening to how that movement travels through you so that you bring your feet to stand. And the idea is we listen. Did I hold someplace that resisted a trailing of movement? Or did I welcome it? I don't activate it. I don't try to do it, but I receive it. And now very slowly, listen to the contact of your feet and only go where the movement feels reversible. Tilt both knees, easy, to which side are you going to start with? It's 50-50, right or left. But go ahead and tilt the knees. You're choosing which direction. Feel what happens to the contact of your feet. What is the amount of movement that you feel I don't hold, I'm not looking or holding, but I just feel it's a subtle little shift. It can be bigger if you choose. What moved with it? And how did you breathe when you did this? And then once you've done the first direction, you do the other direction. Doesn't have to be big, but it's the beginning of feeling you're transferring weight and what follows. And does whatever follow, is it sequential or simultaneous? Meaning when the knees tilt, it is tilting your pelvis. And the base of your spine is housed in your pelvis. That's your tailbone. The junction between your tailbone and your sacrum, that's a joint. The junction between the top of your sacrum and L5. L5 is still housed in the pelvic bowl, but it's part of the spine which is rotating. As the spine subtly rotates with the tilting of the knees, can you feel that rotation through your spine? And how far up your spine does it travel? And you compare this side. How do you breathe? Feet back in the vertical, knees in the vertical, and to the other side. Find your pace, your timing, and keep it luxurious, smooth, pleasant. And listen as you do this. What's happening to your feet? Is there a shifting of weight? Depending on how far you go, does the foot stay planted, but something happens in the bones of your feet that start to mold and create something in your arch? Does a outside of the foot or an inside of the foot begin to lift? Just, you're paying attention. Not that one is what you should do or shouldn't do. What are you doing? And if you had a laser beam light on each kneecap, can you imagine where are those lights shining as you tilt your knees? And feel you're rolling over your pelvis, the sacral bone, towards one glute, back in the middle, then over to the other side. Feel the yielding of your pelvis. Is it just your pelvis? What also happens in your lower back on both sides? And you continue to follow up. And then slowly, you bring that to a rest. Whether your legs are long, one leg is long, one foot stands, both legs are long, you just rest. And I suggest, and it's a suggestion, that when you rest long, you're really looking for what is the sense of the width of my shoulders? And are my legs, the feet, in that ballpark? And listen to your breathing and your contact. And now keep one leg long and bring one foot to stand. And you get to choose. And because your feet are that, what I said, shoulder width, when you stood the foot you chose, is it also still in that ballpark of the width of your shoulders or the width of the fullest portion of your pelvis? And now very slowly, with this knee in the vertical, begin to gently tilt this knee inward, back to the neutral, and an equal amount outward. And listen to how you move over the standing foot. And you're looking to keep it relatively equal, whether it goes in or out. And notice for some that when you go inward, it will only go so far inward because of your structure. It's called your pubic bone. So is there a moment when you feel it can yield more that you change the trajectory of your knee? For some, they'll just tilt in and that's it. That's fine. But if you feel there's something else that wants to go, but where do I feel this constraint that I could, it's not override it, but I find a different trajectory. Can you, at that moment, if you feel that constraint and it's in your pubic bone, it's in the upper groin, can you redirect that knee in the trajectory of the long foot, that big toe, as if it's yielding a little bit on this diagonal? And it would be when you're thinking that the knee tilts inward. When the knee tilts outward, isn't it going due, I'll say, east or west? And when the knee tilts inward, but you think that I go in and then I redirect the knee a little bit on a diagonal as if it was blowing a kiss or sending a fishing line over to that other big toe on the long foot. What did that do in your pelvis, in your lower back, in the ribs? How far up do you feel that gentle casting of a line, of a thread that you feel through you? Easy and playful. When the knee tilts out, it just sort of goes out, and listen to the quality. through the foot, what happens in the ankle, the bones of your feet. When you bring it back into the vertical, you tilt inward and then inward and a little down. And what happened to the contact of your feet, the bones of your feet, of that foot. And then slowly, in one of these two trajectories, you could lengthen this leg. So you find, is it going out? Is it going in? That I choose to lengthen the leg. And if you feel, but I don't want to have two legs long for whatever reason, maybe before you lengthen that leg, you bring the other foot to stand so that when you yield this initial leg standing to lengthen, you don't worry about anything other than the quality of smooth and easy. And then you rest. Then slowly, the leg that just came to rest stays long. The other leg, if it's not standing already, please bring it to stand. And then very gently, a similar exploration. Do you start first with tilting this knee inward or outward? But you're doing it in such a way of a gentle listening. When is the moment if I do tilt the knee inward, when I tilt the knee inward, I do feel that's the distance it goes due to the left or the right. But then it still has the capacity to go further because it's a ball of the femur, the thigh bone, in the hip joint. So the ball will roll in this socket. But where do you change the trajectory with a smooth, easy sense of pleasant? And think of aiming the knee in the trajectory of this long leg, the big toe. And then you bring it back to stand. Feel how you're rolling through your pelvis. Feel the movements, and you take that knee out to the side. Just easy, playful, pleasant. And you feel whether I'm tilting the knee inward or outward. Can I feel what I'm sharing is this thread through you? That you feel it's connecting. And the range, the pacing, your speed, your breathing, it's at a rate for you that you can really gently listen. As I shared in some of my newsletters, I'm not Buddhist, but I believe in so many different philosophies and thoughts of kindness, of loving kindness for yourself. No judgment. Just what is easy for you in this moment, especially if there was some irritation, areas got tired. And then you find for this second leg, I'm going to go ahead and which direction, outward or inward, listening to the contact of the bones of your feet, what transitions, where is it that a side of your foot would become more like a blade, like an ice, like an ice skate, in a sense, but easy, that would be the edge. You slide this leg down long. Is it inward or outward? Is it the same pattern you did with the other leg or different? And notice your contact, your breathing. Now, very slowly, return one at a time, one leg to stand and then the other. And go back gently to tilting both knees as we initially did, to one side, back to the center, to the other side. You can think of a metronome or a ground bass, a rhythm that you're keeping that same rhythm. And you listen how that movement travels through you. There is a great saxophone player, jazz musician, and he said, Watson's his name, last name, and he said, you got to go through it, to go through it, to come through it. You can't run away from it. You can. You can't jump over it. You can. You can't hiatus around it or try to avoid it or elude it. You'll never go through it to come through it. These are things we learn from how to go through something, come through it, to better inform ourselves for the future of our lives and to also help inform others. And then, which side do you feel that you could lengthen slowly? Both legs down long. One might be to the outside edge of your foot. The other one might be to the inside edge. And you come to that conclusion and rest. That's it. There you go. And then it's the quiet rest. Just the only thing possibly you're doing is this gentle, kind listening, settling. Now, very slowly, I'll ask you to bring your feet back to stand. And whether you were or weren't in a class this week or other weeks, think about which side, don't do it yet, but just think about, with feet standing and the tilting of your knees, to which side would you organize yourself to roll and lay on that side? But what about your arms? Could the timing of your tilting your knees and the movement through your arms organize in such a way that they would bring you coordinating with your knees, tilting to the side you will choose? Maybe the bottom arm is the pillow to rest your head on. Maybe you gently reach for some head support if the arm does not want to be the pillow, and you find your way onto your preferred side. And then your knees, hips are folded 90 degrees. Why 90 degrees? What does that afford? Yes, and you scooch and you shift if you feel like, well, I rolled, that was great. I'm at the edge of my mat. You move yourself back and you just settle here. You just settle here. And now, very slowly, we've done this many times. What you want to do with your top hand, you could have it on the floor to support you in a push-up position. You might rest it on the upper hip. What do you choose? These are choices. Just make sure that you have multiple choices. You might have a preference, but that you honor where you made a choice. And life is about choices, so you can make many of them. And now very slowly, create that image again of a little bit of a string tied around your ankles so that the feet, they stay in contact with each other. They're not falling one off of the other, but there's some pivoting. And now in a beautifully oiled, lubricated movement, think that the top hip aligned through the thigh to the knee, that's the femur bone. You glide it a little forward in relationship to the bottom knee, and then you bring it back to neutral, and then you glide it a little back. Keep this gliding sensation pleasant. as if you had just been at the beach or come out of the bath or the shower and you're well lubricated, and it just sort of glides and slides. The knee, the hip a little forward in relationship to the bottom, and then through the middle and back. And listen, is there a rolling sensation? Now, there are a couple of ways you can do this. One way is you feel the rolling all the way through you. And as you glide and slide the top hip and knee forward and back, you feel there's a full rolling. Your head follows that same direction. And then you could do it in such a way where you intentionally create a constraint. Maybe here is when you would for sure use that top hand in a push-up position. And your intention is to go, I'm not going to let, not by huge muscular contraction, but through choice, just like a belly dancer. I'm going to use a constraint in my upper chest, belly, upper solar plexus, head and neck to stay pretty quiet. But I'm going to differentiate from my pelvis, my legs, from the upper torso. Can you do it that way without really holding your breath? You just create a little bit of pressure into the push-up position hand that says, I'm going to keep my chest relatively quiet. There's a little bit of movement that travels, but I'm not going to roll forward and back as I might have been doing in this first exploration. Feel where in your spine you feel, I've created a constraint, but everything below it, can it be oiled and lubricated? That's it. And then you have a third option. The second option already started to create the constraint. Now, an equal amount as you bring the hip and knee forward, you actually rotate pretty much maybe from your waist upward to bring your head and eyes moving in the opposite direction that you are gliding and sliding the top hip and knee. And now you're creating a bigger differentiation. And where through your spine do you feel that? So when the top hip and knee glides forward, that's when your head and eyes are beginning to roll towards the ceiling, maybe even the top shoulder. Maybe you don't need the top hand in a push-up position to work. You put it another place, maybe not. And then when you glide and slide the top hip and knee back, that's when you're bringing your head and eyes, chest a little bit more forward. Where is that place in your spine? You feel the twist. You go easy, gentle, so that you are in control. And some of you might feel that, when I take the hip and knee back and I feel it's just becoming more oiled and lubricated, I begin to feel that that top knee parts from the bottom knee. It yields a little bit, space between the knees, but you keep the bottom knee resting on the floor. That's your ground base. And then you come back and you do the first movement of just gliding and sliding the hip and knee forward and back. Now you have 3 different options of how you organize through your upper chest, head, eyes. But go back to the one of rolling. They're going in the same direction. And just feel if something, quality, it doesn't have to be range of movement. It could be, but quality is simpler, easier, and nicer. And then slowly, if I said, how would you give up the constraint and do the movement of your hip and knee so that you could Roll to your back and rest. And you just notice. These are familiar movements. They're not brand new movements for any of you. We're just piecing them together, listening to the quality of movement and the thread of movement because it travels all the way up. Every nerve, muscle, they're all interconnected one to another on attachment sites, so that it might not be one long thread from the very top to the bottom, but there is a coupling of these threads that weave all the way through you. Every one of those muscles, that the tendon of the muscles attaches to the ridge of your skull, the occipital ridge. Oh my goodness, they also trail all the way down, if not directly, into specific vertebra. They'll, through that indirect connection, connect all the way into your sacral bone and pelvic rim. And then there are muscles that the tendons of those muscles are going to intertwine at those attachment sites and trail through your pelvis all the way down to your legs, all the way down to your knees, all the way down to your ankles and your feet and your toes. You are connected. And that's why I shared this wonderful quote. You got to go through it, to go through it, to come through it. Or else we're just going to use something to try to anesthetize and tune it out. Doesn't go away. It's still there. It just got dampened or dulled. So we can elude ourselves that we didn't go through it to come through it, to get through it. We're going to still have to cope and deal with it down the road. And for jazz singers, blues singers, musicians, the blues and this type of music come from the atrocities that they've had to go through to come through. So they're on the other side of it. This is our learning. Now, once again, come back to that original side you chose. Organize yourself. Use your limbs. Use your breath, use your eyes. Where your eyes go, you will go. Soft eyes. And return into your side lying position. And now very gently, take the top knee and elongate, as long as you don't have something or someone in your way, you're going to have to scooch, and elongate the top knee. It can still rest on the bottom knee so that the top foreleg and foot will rest on the floor on the inside edge of your foot. Okay, I did not make myself clear. Stack your legs one on top of the other. Tie an imaginary string around your knees. And elongate with your thigh staying in this perpendicular relationship, stacked on top of your bottom thigh, bottom knee. Elongate the foreleg, opening the knee of the top knee. Bring the foreleg and foot forward on the floor so that the foot is resting on the inside edge. There you go. And it's okay if it's not at 90 degrees. Honor your leg. All right? Now, very slowly, go back and do that same movement that you did before, but now you're thinking of through the top hip, through the thigh, the femur bone, the knee, the foreleg bones into your foot. Maybe flex the ankle of this top foot and think that you're going to slide this leg forward, and then you bring it back to neutral, and then you slide it a little bit back. That's it. Beautiful. Feel the inside of your foot. And I'm going to suggest that you flex, bend the front of the ankle so that the toes move more in the direction of closer to your shin bone. And you're resting on the inside edge of the foot. You'll feel the big toe side, maybe the inside of the heel. And you're just thinking, I'm gliding and sliding this top hip through the knee, all the way through the whole leg now, the straight leg now, forward and back. And feel how you're rolling over the bottom hip. Good. Now go ahead and take the top arm and lay it flat in front of you, equal to your top leg resting long in front of you, and glide both of them, arm and leg, forward and back. That's it. Beautiful. Now, every time you glide the top leg and arm forward, and then as you get ready to take them back, allow the top arm to lift into the air, cross over you, and sail through the air behind you. It doesn't have to touch the floor, but if it wants to touch the floor, it can. What would happen to the top leg? Would it lift off of the floor? Yes. And then in order to come back, you'd have to take that top leg that lifted and send it back onto the floor. That would bring your arm back. There you go. And listen to the timing of the coordination. And you can begin to play in that little space where you become a seesaw, so that the arm always stays a little bit back behind you and the leg is always in front of you. But it's the arm that helps lead the leg to lift, the top leg to lift. And then it's the leg that's coming back towards the floor that brings the arm away from the floor behind you. And you just play in that little range, teeter-tottering this way, that way. That's it. And then the next time you come onto your side, you bring the arm also on the side, coming back into this rolling sensation, sliding forward. And then if I said, keep sliding the arm and the top leg forward as you lengthen the bottom leg, and see where that brings you. Did you just roll onto your belly? How would you come back from your belly onto the side? What would you do? That's it. Feel where you empower yourself. And do it again, transitioning from your side through the top arm and the top leg, sliding forward, gliding and sliding forward to roll to your belly. How would you reverse it? How to use your breath? What happens to that bottom leg? Do you keep it long or do you bend it again to help propel you back to your side? And then the next time you actually come to your belly, stay on your belly. Make yourself comfortable. Lengthen your legs. Bring your arms, your head where you want them. And be on your belly. And just rest here for a moment. And feel gravity is 14 pounds per square inch that weighs on us. So feel the shape of you. Listen to your breathing, because now it's your belly, your chest against the floor. Can you feel the curves of your spine? And now, slowly, bend both knees, bring both feet towards the ceiling. Remember the first movement we did, but you were on your back and we were standing our feet. As gentle and easy, tilt your feet, your knees slowly from one side back to the middle and to the other. Just notice you have your head in a specific orientation. You can keep it there. Just feel. You can change where your head is. But just feel. You're tilting your feet, your knees again. And can you imagine you don't have the floor, but feel what's happening to the edges of your feet. Feel what's happening in the front of your thighs and your belly and the front of your hip joints. And then if I said, bring the hand, which hand, into a push-up position, which one would you do? Which way would you direct your feet, your knees, that you would transition yourself from your belly back onto your side? Find how you come back onto your side. There you go. And then from back on your side, just go ahead and glide and slide your top hip and knee forward and back easy until you feel, I could just totally let this go and unfold myself to lie on my back and rest. Notice your contact. Your breathing. And how you've been transitioning yourself from your back, rolling, twisting, onto a preferred side. Sort of the same idea. I'm sharing with you these movements, whether we did it on our back, on our side, or on our belly. Can you feel the thread of it's the same gestalt of the movement? What if you were seated in a chair? Could you find it there? And now very slowly, bring your feet to stand. And the opposite side, the one we haven't explored yet, please find your way there slowly. Start by tilting the knees from one side to the other. What do you do with your arms? What is your pathway? Do the arms go across you? Do the arms go overhead and around? One has to go up to be the pillow for your head. The other one has to circle around. What are your pathways? And you find yourself on the second side. And then you just rest there for a moment to feel the contact. And what were the movements that we did? Well, think about first a little string around your ankles. And just begin to now think of this top hip and knee. And just an easy gliding and sliding of the top hip and knee forward. Can you feel the minute you slide and glide the top hip and knee forward, what's happening with your sacral bone? What's happening in the rotation of your spine? Can you feel not just the top side, but the bottom side, the floor side that you are resting on? Remember, there were three possibilities. The possibility of rolling, pretty much a simultaneous sensation. The top hip and knee glides forward, and then they glide back. You traverse through the middle, the neutral. How do you breathe as you initiate the gliding forward, as you bring the knee to stack, and as you glide back? How do you choose to breathe? Can you compare? And then remember, we made a constraint. We said, no, now intentionally, like a belly dancer, constrain your chest, your upper solar plexus area. Don't hold tight, but just here, it's an intention. I'm here. And keep the gliding and sliding of this new top, hip, and knee forward and back. But there's minimal movement. So there's the beginning of a differentiation through your spine. Where do you feel it? And then remember, there was the third way. You actually, as you glide the top hip and knee forward, you intentionally bring your head and eyes, maybe the top shoulder, towards the ceiling back. So now you're creating a bigger differentiation of a twist. As you take the top hip and knee forward, that's when your head and eyes and top shoulder would be gliding towards the ceiling. And then when you inhale and then you begin to actually glide and slide the top hip and knee back, that's when the head and eyes, maybe top shoulder, come forward. Where through your spine do you feel it differentiates? There's a twist, and certain vertebrae go this way, and other vertebrae go that way. And you're just being gentle with yourself, loving kindness, so that you don't have to ever tap into the edges. You do, or you go, okay. How did I respond to that? Did I react? Did I jolt? And then slowly pause, rest. Elongate the top knee so it's going forward. You can put your top arm forward like they're parallel. Notice how, don't correct this top leg when the knee straightens. If it's not at 90 degrees, maybe it's not. Maybe it's at 45 degrees. Where is it for you that it's available, but the top knee can be housed on the bottom knee? And you're resting on the inside edge of the foot. And begin again, gliding and sliding. Now it's not just the top hip and knee, it goes through the knee because the knee is straight into the foot. And think of the heel so that you, as you glide forward, maybe as you glide back, you want to extend the ankle, but as you glide forward, flex that ankle, bringing the forefoot and the toes on the floor, but the toes now are sort of wanting to shine a light on your shin bone. And you do the rolling sensation. Your head, your eyes, your chest, the upper arm slide forward with the leg, and then they slide back. And then go ahead and start to differentiate, which means as you slide forward, you slide forward. But as you start to glide the foot, the hip back, allow that top arm to lift into the air with the greatest of ease and let it sail back behind you. And if your intention is, well, but I wanted to touch the floor, what would have to happen to the top leg and foot? Would it lift from the floor? And then when the arm said, oh, the leg has got to come back, you bring the leg back and the arm lifts. And you become a teeter-totterer. You can just play in the middle so that the arm always stays behind you and the leg always in front of you, or you can totally fold. You get choice here. And then the next time you find that the leg and the arm are teeter-tottering back, leg lifts, arm goes back behind you, oh, sail that leg around and come onto your back and rest. There you go. And just rest. That's it. And feel your contact. and how this thread of movement, it's a thread of the movement, but it's threaded through you through muscles and nerves, tendons, joint systems, ligaments. When we intentionally, on demand, choose to constrain, choose to contract, it's fine because it's our choice. But is it a choice or is it an habituation we're not even aware we're constantly doing that all of a sudden starts to be the tipping point for an ouchie and ooey? Why is this happening? There's one thought. I don't go so adamant in it, but I do suggest that some of these, what happened? An accident. Are they really accidents? Or as I often joke, oh, they were an accident waiting to happen because it was us not so well organized that we weren't recognizing. We weren't wanting to go through it, to come through it. And rest. And then slowly bring your feet to stand. Go back slowly, tilting your knees, spiraling with your arms, back to the second side lying position. For most I've seen, we started with the right, now you're to the left. And now, whether you have your knees bent or you're opting for long legs, remember what we did on the other side when we transitioned from our side through gliding and sliding? We kept gliding and sliding the top arm forward and back, but when was it that we released the constraint of the bottom leg bent at the hip and knee, that we found I could transition onto my belly? And then you go to your belly and then you reverse it. How does the timing of your coordination of your limbs when they're straight and then they bend? Is there a choice that I want to put a hand in a push-up position to help empower me, but easy? How do you breathe? Where do your eyes go? And then the next time you're on your belly, you stay there. Find that space, hip width, shoulder width between your feet, your heels. And just notice, are my heels inward and my toes out? Or are my heels out and my toes inward? Or are my heels right on top of my toenails? Each one of these is really an organization in our hip joints. So maybe start with one leg. Which one are you going to choose? And start to rotate really gently. So first you notice the disposition of that leg. Is it your right leg you're going with, your left? And just think, I want to move so that in one direction, the heel of that leg is more out, the toes are more in. Then the heel comes over the forefoot and the toes, and then the heel goes in, and it seems that the toes are further out to the side. Go really gentle, because can you feel with the long leg, that's right into your hip joint, into your groin. And go slow. That's it. Beautiful. And then you do it with the other one. You can let one rest, then you do the other one. What is the disposition of your right hip, of your left hip? What is your bias? Can you do either of these three positions? And then can you do them together? Do you want to do them in such a way that they're in opposition of each other? I would say flapper girls. Or do you do it where, there's where I go like windshield wipers. Oh, if I take both of my heels to the right, what happens to the forefoot toes? If I take both of my heels through the middle to the left? So I'm giving you all these different variations. So you're self-caring yourself, playing, not corrected, just asking, I have 3 different ways I could rest this way. And then slowly, if I said, how would you go from here? Bend your knees, bring your feet into the air, and begin that same movement we started with on our back, tilting. Now it's your knees, your forelegs and feet from one side, through the middle to the other. You could change the way your head is organized. You could keep your head where you put it. You could put your hands in push-up positions to lift your head as if you wanted to look over a shoulder to see in that direction. And then I would say from here, how would you organize yourself? Could you look in one direction over the shoulder so that that same knee, foot lifted into the air and then crossed over to roll you via the side onto your back? There you go. That's it. And then when you come to your back, rest. You need to scooch over, you scooch over. Feel how you do it. Do you feel more potent? Do you feel more powerful? Or do you just go, no, I'm going to roll back onto my back and do it to the other side? But you rest now. Self-care. Movements you've all learned in multiple lessons you've partaken of. Weaving them together in a way that you care for yourself, to soothe, to calm, to elongate, to soften, pleasing, pleasurable. Listen to your breathing, your contact. And then slowly bring your feet to stand. A couple of times, just add in that movement we didn't do, that gentle, lovely exploration where you gently push into the feet and there's a movement that tilts all the way up. The pelvis tilts, your head rocks up. And then you reverse it. Pelvis tilts down, head rocks down. And then you could do it so much smaller but faster that it doesn't really tilt as much as it's an oscillation, like a little bloom, 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 bloom. That's it. One is a tilting. Lovely. I often speak about it's an own self-care massage of your spine and your muscles of the back, especially when they're tired. Just don't push. Then this other one, this is the oscillation that is lubricating every joint as if you were on a pogo stick. Beautiful. And then you let that quiet. Tilt your knees to one side. Which side? Gather your limbs, roll to the side, and slowly transition from your side to sit and to come stand. Your limbs are your levers. Use them efficiently so that you feel the connection when you need to push. It's connected through. Because pushing is easier than pulling. And then when you come upright in your vertical, you just stand there for a moment. Find the stacking of your joints, your alignment. Shift your legs, shift your weight, shifting weight here, shifting weight there. Where is your head and your eyes? Are they on top of your spine? On your horizon? Yeah. And then have a little walk and notice what I self-care, a lesson about how to care for myself that awakens throughout all of me, what it offers me.